Welcome to A Joy to Be Me, a podcast sharing the magic of minerals, microbes, and a return back to nature's ways. Tune in to learn how to nourish yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's time to reconnect with and deepen the fundamentals of human health so we can return to our wild state. I'm your host, Lydia Joy. Let's celebrate this wild ride we call the human experience. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back, and happy Pisces season. We are in the final stretch of winter, and I don't know about you, but I have been soaking up the extra daylight that we have now, and I've been spotting the first signs of spring. The birds have been way more active lately. I've noticed baby nettles in the woods and garlic mustard poking up through the forest floor. And gosh, it just gets me so excited to see nature waking up and what we have to look forward to really, really soon. And this is the time of year where I think people are starting to really feel the effects of winter. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you are too. Maybe you're feeling sluggish. Maybe you're holding on to a bit more weight, or dealing with some mental challenges, maybe some brain fog, or I think a lot of people, haven't figured out their light hygiene properly, right? Like not getting enough natural light in the winter. It's a little harder. And I think that can impact our mental health as well. And so spring can often really help shake us out of this rut. I think that's why we look so forward to it as well sometimes, right? Like it's kind of like, yay, we can break out of this. But it's also a time when people start thinking about the cleaning up, right? And, one of the ways it often plays out is with, a detox or a cleanse, right? Or some kind of crazy diet, right? And today I want to dive into this topic and share why you don't actually need a detox or a cleanse or some kind of diet in the spring and what your body really needs instead. And honestly, guys, for the love of God, there's a mentality behind all of this trend that goes on that I really think we could lay it to rest for good, right? There's a lot about it that's very problematic. And so with spring around the corner, I figure this is going to start to come up again, right? Like in some form. Every year it does. Every year, no matter where you are on the planet, you're going to see some type of marketing about some kind of spring cleanup, some kind of cleanse, some kind of detox, some kind of diet, some kind of fitness thing, whatever, right? So I figured I would revisit this topic again from a different lens and try and get out ahead of it, right? Last spring, I shared an episode titled Spring Nutrition to Detox the Natural Way. You can check that out if you'd like to. It's good. It's got a good perspective that, you might want to tune into, especially if you're, working to rewild yourself and become nature. And in the long run, in the grand scheme, I really want to see this way of approaching health and nutrition become sexy, attuned to nature's ways. We just have a bit of a learning curve, that's all. And, a lot of deconditioning to do. I talked about deconditioning in my last episode, right? As well as relearning. And we also need to learn to trust our bodies again. Many of us need to get out of that cell danger mode that I talked about a few episodes back and into safety and stability mode so we can really restore deeper capacity for just full out living in these amazing bodies we were gifted. Even with the degenerations that have been passed down, we still have the capability for amazing repair and restoration. Now, someone recently asked me about liver function and its connection to mineral balancing and a woman's cycle. And that's a really big conversation, to be honest with you. And so I wanted to dig into it just a little bit more here in the episode as well. And many of my clients also ask this question too. They're like, do I need to do more for my liver? Because a lot of times when we get started, we're doing a lot of basic gentle nourishment and a lot of habits, and we're stacking and layering a lot of wonderful things. And I guess they're like, well, what about my liver? And we're always addressing the liver no matter what. But I think it's like this conditioned thing that in order to support your liver, you have to do some kind of detox or some kind of cleanse or some kind of like liver targeted thing. And you have to do it, more so because of the times we're in, right? So that said, first things first, no organ of the body works alone, and your liver is not a machine. Just gonna throw that in there. But I think we often are so focused on the liver these days because we see a greater need for effective detoxification. So the liver just gets highlighted in people's minds and in the online health space, and that is valid. But we just don't want to get myopic about it or go overboard or push too much on the liver at once. Our bodies are self-healing. We don't need to force anything. We need to allow it to do its job more effectively. This means we got to get out of the way. We got to get out of our own way. And it also means consistently creating daily lifestyle habits that deeply support all our functions in addition to our liver. Now, when I first got started on my mineral journey, and what I mean by this is I started using hair tissue mineral analysis. It was back in 2014. And I used it to help guide me in correcting my body chemistry. I used it to see the gaps that I was missing. I used it to see what the heck was going on, because at the time I needed to see more information. And not very many people were doing it at the time or teaching it other than the Dr. Eck Wilson way, the nutritional balancing way. So, of course, I started checking that route out. But also, I just started trying like all the things, right? Like, we probably all can relate to this. And some of those things included like trying to purge things out of my body instead of gently creating the deeper nourishment, rest, lifestyle, to reroute my system. I mean, I did those things too. I was doing those things, but I was also doing a bunch of other things, and I was just doing a lot of things. Because why? I was still in a very hyper vigilant state. My nervous system was still super deluxe on the fritz, and I didn't understand this at that time early on. So, of course, I was in a place where, I felt like I had to hurry up and do all the things because, I couldn't keep living the way that I was living. And I still was kind of like led to believe that I had all these toxins in my body. I needed to get them all out of my body in a hurry, get them out of my liver, get them out of my intestines, like I needed to purge, I needed to just, assist this process along, right? Now, this didn't sit well with me for very long, thankfully. So I didn't stick with it for too long. I did the coffee enema route for a little while. I just stopped doing that. It was just too much. I did, some gut protocols. I did the whole oregano oil thing. I did some tests, a few tests to see if I had this, that, or the other thing. Did I have H. pylori? Did I have SIBO? Did I have, all the things I was looking into because I had issues of sluggishness in my body. I had bloating. I had gas. I had poor energy. I had struggling moods. I had just a lot of things going on in my body that it was like stagnating, right? Like it wasn't flowing freely, right? And so, but the truth is that none of those approaches worked. But what did work was all the gentler things and the slower than I wanted to. But those were the things that I had to focus on, what I could do to nourish myself, including, slowing down and immersing myself in nature and resting more. And, I kept studying, I kept researching, I kept learning, I kept applying, and I kept iterating. And over the years, I learned a lot. Now, I believe that if we don't understand how our bodies work, we could very easily be swayed into doing things that do not make sense because there's a lot of stuff out there swirling around in the world, and there's a lot of people still operating from their conditioning, even though maybe they mean well, right? And then, we may have a hard time filtering information, right? So if we don't understand how our bodies work and we haven't learned yet to trust our bodies to work as they should, right? Um, this could be very problematic, right? So, um, what we want to do is support our whole self and support all our organs of elimination along with our liver, including our kidneys, our skin, our lymph, our microbiome, and so on. And I think that there are ways we can do this where we are covering a lot of bases all at once. So that said, nowadays I look at detoxification as a very natural aspect of my daily life. I don't look at it as some separate thing of all these steps I have to do, all these things I have to take. It's just a part of my lifestyle. It's a part of my daily life, as well as seasonally, right? Our body can work with what nature provides every single season to assist us in this way. Okay. So, definitely check out the Spring Nutrition to Detox Naturally if you're interested in the whole learning about how to support yourself seasonally. I also learned, you know, I was in a hurry. Okay. I think a lot of people are living in a manner that's like so many things are going on and they haven't learned how to slow down or not let society dictate their whole lifestyle, right? And so for me, I had to learn to live a whole new way, right? To allow myself to have the space for the habits and to keep my whole system functioning versus this whole balls to the wall, go, 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 throw everything at myself, all or nothing kind of thing, right? That's culture. Culture has created that kind of mindset, and we've all been conditioned within that culture. So we all have our work to do to shift that within ourselves and in how we're operating in our lives, right? So I learned that my body is self-cleansing and regenerating, and that what my body was treating as toxins also in part came from within me, right? So that's the whole, you know, recycling things within ourselves, the endotoxins, the things that we can't digest and break down, and so on and so forth. I've covered that in multiple episodes around the gut health piece. And I also had to recognize I had been in a lifelong pattern, right, that had compounding effects, and it would take my body however long it took to do the repair. I've since realized that can take longer when you have extreme circumstances or extra parameters, right? Like for me, living in mold 30 years of my life, raising 4 kids on my own for a long time, while also living in mold and still reacting, for example, just to keep it brief here. So the truth is we can all learn to reset ourselves. Okay. And so when we feel sluggish mentally, physically, emotionally, it's likely, our internal flow and eliminative organs are not optimized at the moment, our digestion. And yes, our liver probably needs support, not just some targeted cleanse or some targeted detox. That doesn't teach you the habits, skills, or even help you get back to your intuition to know how to live in your body at all times, equipped to help yourself. You know, a cleanse, a detox, they miss out on a big opportunity to live in a regenerative way. Now, I do think they have their place. If you've done one before or two, you probably learned some things. You probably kept one or two of the things maybe, right? But if you find that you keep going back to a cleanser or a detox, clearly, there's work to be done in the spaces in between when you're not doing the cleanser or the detox. So do you see what I'm saying? So I feel that a cleanse or a detox should not be used because we're all avoiding like creating the habits, the healthy habits, right? I don't think it serves us in the long run. And oftentimes, these detoxes and cleanses and things like that, these concepts and protocols and whatever, there's so many of them. They get stretched in many different directions and become whole dogmas. And we don't need any more dogma. We need to listen to our bodies. We need to learn how to listen to our bodies always. And then we also need to know how to interpret what they're trying to tell us. Now, I do believe detoxification is critical if you want to stay healthy and if you want to have good energy, you want to maintain a stable mood, if you want to have healthy hormones and a good cycle. Ladies, unfortunately, we do live in a world bombarded by toxins at every turn, right? Which is why, learning daily detox strategies, it's not just like a nicety, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, here, I bought my green juice and this and that, whatever. You know, it's a necessity. It's a necessity to iterate forward with this in mind. And so that's what I want to talk about. Because your body is detoxing constantly, right? It can only do so much. It can only do what it can do. So you need to be aware of this, right? Because the sheer volume of chemicals we're exposed to today is just insane, right? We know this. Between all the pesticides, the air and water pollution, the synthetic chemicals, the processed foods, we're all carrying a bigger chemical burden than our bodies were designed to handle, right? So when the detox systems, especially the liver and the lymph, and even your gut, right? Like when they're all overwhelmed, this is when we can experience the chronicness, right? The chronic issues we don't like, the fatigue, the sluggishness, the skin problems, the bloating, and maybe constipation, or maybe like you're getting more headaches than usual, or maybe you're not sleeping as well and your cycles are a little wonky where you're feeling, more congested at the end of your luteal phase, or it's just slowing you way down. You get the point, right? But the beautiful thing is your liver is pretty freaking amazing. It really is a powerhouse and it performs so many functions, hundreds and hundreds of functions. It also does support digestion, and help us metabolize our fats, proteins, and carbs. It helps us balance our hormones and our blood sugar, and it helps to produce bile to break down the fats, to also eliminate toxins. And it also helps us to detoxify all the substances that we're exposed to daily. Okay? But sometimes it gets overloaded, right? And it just cannot do what it's supposed to do as effectively, as quickly, as efficiently. And when this goes on for any length of time and we aren't really aware of it, it can lead to a lot of issues. We've got things like fatty liver, biliary insufficiency, which is when we have poor bile production, and that can lead to a whole bunch of things. But then it can also compromise our gallbladder. So I've talked about bile before. I call it sludgy bile. A lot of people have that. I've talked about, this in entire past episode, but I want to reiterate it for a second. Your liver produces about a quart of bile each day, which is stored in your gallbladder until you need it for digestion. Now, the bile is kind of like Pac-Man. It's like critical. It goes in there, munch, 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 breaks down your fats, eliminates the toxins. However, when your liver kind of takes like a little bit of a hit, whether it's from, you indulged over the holidays and your diet wasn't as good, maybe you got exposed to too many environmental toxins somehow, or maybe you just, I don't know, spent years on the low fat. Honestly, I don't even think about low fat anymore, you guys. I think more about the bad fat and maybe even too much fat these days. People are overdoing it on the fat or overdoing it on the bad fats, right? Or maybe you're not eating enough fat. Maybe there are people still doing the whole low fat thing. I don't know. But this is when our bile production suffers or when we have challenges there, right? Like, and so then your detox pathways become sluggish. Now, your liver doesn't just handle the fats. The bile doesn't just handle the fats. It also metabolizes carbohydrates and proteins, helps stabilize your blood sugar by storing and releasing glycogen. And it even can, if needed, to convert fats or protein into glucose if carbs are scarce. Right? Like, so that would have been a built-in mechanism for us long ago when we were hunter-gatherers and, there are different environments or times or seasons or whatnot. It also processes amino acids into proteins, right, which we need to play essential roles in helping us balance our hormones. Also, waste transport and the whole bit for our health, right? The big job the liver has to do these days, and the one that gets put at like the greatest risk is detoxification, because really toxins are just everywhere, right? We also have the endotoxins, which can be natural byproducts of metabolism, like ammonia. When they get out of control, when we have endotoxins, it's like kind of getting out of control. Exotoxins, like prescription meds, alcohol, the pollutants that we have indoors, the car exhaust, the pesticides, all the things, right? So your liver is always going to be working no matter what to neutralize and transform these toxins into substances that your body can actually safely eliminate, either through your urine, your bowels, your feces, your sweat, even your breath. And the basics are, there are two phases, right? We have the phase 1. This is what breaks toxins apart. It makes them water soluble, but temporarily a little more reactive. And then phase 2 conjugates or like attaches enzymes to those altered toxins, making them non-toxic and ready for elimination. Now, these phases, they got to work in harmony. So if phase 1 is overactive or phase 2 underperforms, you can end up with a buildup of like reactive intermediates, like basically toxins that aren't fully neutralized. We also need many other functions working properly for true detoxification, right? Like, so one of the big key connections that I've been focusing on for a while is the gut, right? So that we have this liver gut axis, if you will. And the liver isn't technically part of the digestive system or the microbiome, but it's deeply connected to how we process and eliminate waste. So again, everything affects everything in the human body. And when our digestion is weak, and I'm going to say this, most of us have some, impairment, if you will, with our digestion these days. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So you may not think that your digestion is bad, or I don't want to say bad. Your digestion is weak, or your digestion is even a little impaired. You might not think that if you don't have really obvious digestive systems. It's very common for people to not just assume like, oh, I'm fine. But really what weak digestion means is that your body doesn't like fully break down and absorb your food as efficiently as it should or could. And so this can lead to an accumulation of waste and undigested food in your intestinal tract. And over time, this creates a more stagnant environment in your gut. And even we could call it like damp, if you will. And then your body can react to this buildup that's going on in there. And sometimes it can do it with an inflammation. And like it could be more of a heat buildup in there. So that could be like a damp heat pattern going on in your gut. Um, and so, that could show up in digestive symptoms like constipation, but it doesn't just stop there. It can reflex out into the liver, the blood, the skin, and create all these like systemic issues. And here's the kicker: doing a food-based detox or cleanse doesn't address this new environmental terrain that's been created. It doesn't get to the roots of the problem and into the whole new terrain that's going on there, right? And it's not going to repair your digestive power or improve your absorption. No, it's just not. I think that the reason why many people feel they need a detox in the first place is because their digestion isn't working properly, and a cleanse is not going to fix that. And for women especially, like sluggish digestion and elimination can impact your hormones and your cycle, and leading to symptoms like fatigue, bloating, irregularity, like really shitty sleep. Like, what is going on with my sleep? Why can't I sleep? And then that leads to even more fatigue and slowness, which now you're not detoxing as effectively because you're not getting that whole beautiful lymphatic flush when you sleep, right? So, anyways, if someone has patterns of what we're going to call it slow oxidation, which is just like a really sluggish metabolism, if you will, tired glandular function, like the adrenals and thyroid are just like slower cellular reserves. Slow oxidation is a pattern found in hair tissue mineral analysis, or the fast 4, like the burned out fast oxidizer pattern, right? These people are dealing with lower energy reserves, poor cellular receptivity, and a slowing down of their adrenals and their thyroid. And this is really the body's way of, after you've been in a stress pattern for a really long time, of slowing you down to protect yourself. But the problem is, it also slows down the eliminative functions, and it makes the detoxification harder, and it leaves you feeling more sluggish and fatigued. All right. So in my work with hair tissue mineral analysis, there's certain markers like an elevated calcium to potassium ratio, which is our thyroid ratio, a low sodium to magnesium ratio, which is our adrenal ratio. I also look at that as a detox ratio, or a low sodium to potassium ratio, which tells me a lot, actually. That ratio is a biggie. We call it the vitality ratio, but man, it connects to everything. And all these being out of balance show me that someone is in kind of survival mode. These patterns reflect low energy reserves, poor digestion, and a body that's just stuck treading water. Now, survival mode, gosh, I've been there, and man, whew, it's like holding down, I don't know, 5 full-time jobs while barely staying afloat. I know that's maybe extreme, but it's exhausting. And it just keeps your nervous system on high alert. So when you're in this state, your body doesn't have the energy to detoxify effectively or digest food well or maintain a robust immune system. It's why people feel fatigued and sluggish and, just disconnected, not to mention why they might struggle to show up fully in their life. Now, to me, this is just another reason why doing a detox or a cleanse is not the solution. It misses the bigger picture. It misses the breakdown of your inner ecosystem. If you don't have strong reserves, forcing a detox can backfire, and it just won't create lasting change. And to me, true healing isn't about forcing your body to purge. It's about bringing up your reserves, repairing your digestion, creating the safety and energy your body needs to heal itself. All right. So hopefully that helps give us some perspective on how to view taking care of ourselves. And I want to share just a couple of things I'm currently doing. And I'm not saying anyone should do the exact same thing I'm doing. I just want to share it as an example of how I support myself. And you might want to look into them. But generally speaking, I eat really well. I eat the best that I've eaten in my whole life. And it's something I've been working on for a really long time. But I have the ability in this time of my life to source really high quality food. I eat locally a lot. I eat seasonally a lot. I eat plenty of functional fibers. I'm working with a lot of plants. It's wonderful. So I've got that pretty dialed in. And that's really foundational, but a lot of people overlook it because I haven't just yet made it habitual, right? But I want to say that because we have to remember when I just talked about the two phases of detox that the liver needs to do, um, the liver needs nutrients to run both phases of detoxification. So we have to remember that. No amount of cleanses are necessarily going to fix that in a short amount of time. It could help. It could. I'm not saying that a cleanse couldn't help you some. I'm just saying that that concept is very short-sighted. All right. So the baseline has got to be plenty of deep nourishment to give you what you need to run the liver in the first place. Okay. And so I do take a few things as, liver support, if you will, but really I don't view it that way. It's so much more than just my liver. But here are the current herbal allies that I am using. Milk Thistle, and I have a whole podcast episode on that if you want to check it out. And this one's pretty well known, right? Like we know a lot about Milk Thistle. It supports liver detoxification. It's pretty broadly tolerated. Yellow dock is a lesser known plant. I fell in love with the family of dock plants when I started foraging, and I collect them nearby, and they're wonderful. But yellow dock caught my attention when I was working on my blood flow and anemia, which I've dealt with historically, which I talked about a couple episodes ago with my mother's health and her anemia. And then I talked about my blood flow issues back in my episode on the spleen. So yellow dock is really wonderful because it absorbs iron from the soil and converts it into bioavailable compounds. So it makes it a really great iron and mineral tonic. And it also helps flush toxins through the liver, our gallbladder, our lymph, and intestines, while also remineralizing the body. So it's been a really wonderful one for me. I have used it with some clients as well. I'm also working with burdock root. I fell in love with burdock root a while ago. I've been using it for quite some time, on and off. I tend to use it more so in the winter. And it's a deeply nourishing herb. It supports liver health. It helps to kind of like purify the blood. It helps to promote lymphatic flow. It's a wonderful ally for gently clearing toxins, especially when there's a need to support both the liver and the skin. Maybe you have some kind of skin eruptions of some sort or cycle-related skin acne or something like that. The other thing that I love about burdock is it's also a prebiotic, right? So we want to help feed our beneficial gut bacteria with prebiotics. And that also then helps make it a powerful addition to our digestive and detox support when we have those functional fibers in there feeding our microbes. The other thing about yellow dock is that it's also a great bitter. Now, I've talked about bitters a lot in many episodes throughout. And so this is kind of like my current bitters, if you will. I've been, seasonally changing up my bitters to just kind of like work with different ones and see how my body responds to it. But excuse me. But we know that bitters are going to help our body to flush toxins through our gallbladder, our liver, our lymph, our intestines, right? Now, the people that benefit the most from ongoing use of bitters are, the people who have like that damp or stagnant tissue state, right? Like, because the bitters are going to stimulate the liver and gallbladder to secrete bile. And this is going to aid in, like I said, it's going to aid us in that detox process, right? You do want to make sure that you are getting the functional fibers so that when you're stimulating that bile secretion, it's getting carried out through the bowels. Now, I just want to say again, like this whole ecosystem thing about your body, like your body's an ecosystem, right? So think about it like when, if digestion is slowing down or if you don't have effective digestion, and it's inefficient, you're going to experience this like swampy state, right? I'm sure you've all seen like a creek or a body of water get congested, like maybe a whole bunch of trees fall down and like, collect and everything pools up, and you've seen like that like stagnant state where the water isn't flowing and it's getting this funky film up on top, and maybe like all the litter gets collected unfortunately. Do you see what I'm saying? So like this is the same thing in the body, is you're getting like swampy, if you will, like you're getting stagnant. Toxins can build up, digestion struggles, symptoms like sluggishness, brain fog, and all the things can occur. So there's this new ecosystem environment within you, in light of some things upstream, kind of like blocking the way, if you will. So now, obviously, healing isn't about isolating any one problem or choosing any one herb to like fix you, right? That's why I have a couple plants going on all at once. And they all have affinities, different affinities, right? And I want to make sure that you understand that whatever the affinities of the plant are, they really do need to align with your unique constitution and physiology. So we have this mindset of like, oh, milk thistle's for my liver. I always need liver support, so I'm just going to take milk thistle forever and ever more, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times people are taking the same things because they read it was good for their liver, or they read it was good for this, or they read it was good for that, and they've took it for years, right? I just have to say these things so we're all doing our due diligence to realize when we enter this world and we're working with herbs, we have to kind of really understand that, they may not all be exactly right for every person who's listening to this podcast, which is why I told you what I'm doing. I'm not saying you should do. All right. So sometimes, giving them a try, it can't hurt. Do your research, or work with someone who knows how to work with the herbal allies. They're not natural drugs. Okay. That's the whole point I'm trying to make. We don't want to use them as like a drug or a medication. They are allies, and they work best when we think about the whole picture. And, some people might be able to work with milk thistle, but not yellow dock. And some people might find burdock makes them too gassy, or, you know what I'm saying? So it just depends on where your body's at and how these plants can assist you and work with you. Now, in my work with clients, I'm using a hair test, a HTMA, alongside of, a full health history to really uncover patterns that they've had going on in their life and imbalances in their body. And when we go through this process, it really provides a lot of clarity to help us create a strategy to restore function without cleanses, without the restrictive diets, without the intense detoxes. Instead, we're going to focus on the things that I talked about today: deep nourishment, foundational habits, targeted nutrients, gentle detox, digestive and gut restoration, right? Sometimes we do need relief care, right? So like some of these herbs that I just mentioned, could provide some serious relief for some people, especially if they're having more like flare-ups or stress responses that are leading to some very uncomfortable, circumstances in their body, right? And sometimes we do need to do that before we can make deeper progress. So, sometimes we really have to bring in some assistance to, clean things up. I'm not so, the idea of detoxifying via a detox protocol, it's understandable why we want that. It's just we always want to be addressing the bigger picture over time and the gut and all these things, right? Because they all work together. So, with all that said, in the work that I do, I try to integrate all this for my clients, right? And this is why I also offer some um, additional support through an online program, which I've created resources and tools and weekly check-ins to keep clients motivated and supported. So if you found this helpful and if you have been struggling and maybe you're ready to get some clarity on how your body is functioning or needs to function and see the gaps like I saw in mine years ago and start addressing all these root causes and the inner terrain of your health struggles, um, I would love to invite you to check out my HTMA consultation online program. And the link is in the show notes. If you align with my approach and you're interested in working together, go check that out and you can sign up there. I do want to encourage us to just be patient with ourselves. Not to say that you shouldn't make any progress. You absolutely should be making progress, but it does take patience, right? It takes care. It takes practice. Progress is absolutely possible when we support the body as the ecosystem that it is, without this like sense of hurry or force, right? And we just allow it to like get back to its flourishing state, right? Well, I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found something here to chew on and take away. And if you did, and you know anyone who would also find it helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. And stay tuned until next time. I hope you all stay wild and well.